Oh, well, that's it.
That's that to me. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting of the 27th of January 2026. First one for this year. Happy New Year, everybody. I am going to invite our CEO, Mr. Jeremy, to start with item 1, which is recording and live streaming of council meetings. Thank you, Mr. Jeremy.
All council meetings are filmed, with both video and audio being recorded. Video is focused on a specific area, however, audio from the entire room is captured. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. By submitting a question, you consent to your question being read aloud at the meeting. The reason behind recording council meetings is to hold us more accountable and to improve transparency of council's decision-making to our community. The full meeting is being streamed live on council's YouTube channel, which is Alpine Shire Council, and will also be available on the YouTube channel shortly after this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Item 2 is acknowledgement of traditional custodians and recognition of all people. I invite all to stand while we acknowledge them. Alpine Shire Council acknowledges the Taungurung peoples as the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting today. Council also acknowledges all of the traditional owners of the wider lands of the area known as the Alpine Shire. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community and who continue to strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all. Thank you. Item 3 is confirmation of minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting M12 held on the 16th of December 2025. Councillors. Do any councillors have any comments? Councillor Graham? Councillor Anderson?
No comments.
No. We'll take that one to the vote then. All those in favour? It'll be carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is item 4, apologies, and we have an apology from our Director of Corporate and Community, Ms Cook, who has been stepped in as acting CEO over the some of the Christmas break, and we have our acting Director of Manager Corporate, Ms Ebony Bennett, Buckley, sorry, I'm thinking, now I'm going to Jane Austen. So thank you very much for stepping in tonight. And I also just wanted to mention that we now have two Ms Buckleys as our directors, so I'll be very sure that I'm talking about Director of Assets and Director of Corporate and Community. The next item is item 5, obituaries and congratulations. And I'm going to start on my left with Councillor Tansen.
There we go. I don't have any obituaries. However, I do have a few congratulations. They were all mentioned yesterday for the Australia Day Awards, but I'd like to just revisit those. Firstly, Lorraine Hughes from Havilah for the Lifetime Achievement Award, Steve Gardner from Toowoomba South for the Local Achiever from the Kiewa Valley, Evelyn Niedzvetsky from Upper Gundowring as the Local Young Achiever of the Year for the Kiewa Valley, Belinda Ramina from Myrtleford, Local Achiever of the Year from Myrtleford and District, celebrating 180 years of Toowoomba and the organising committees for the Community Event of the Year Award, as well as finally for the Community Organisation of the Year Award, Bright Food Co-op from Bright. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just to reiterate from Councillor Tansen there, Councillor Ronco and myself went to the Bright and the Harrodville Awards, and I'd just like to really congratulate the two recipients, the Bright Food Co-op and Lorraine Hughes. It was really good to see the emotion of the people that we present the awards to and how much it means to them. And I'd just really like to reach out. We made a note of that on the day to both areas that really people look out. There's a lot of people that go under the radar that should be nominated for these awards. we know there's a lot of people do a lot of good work in our community across the Alpine Shire. So reach out to anyone out there that knows of people that does work that goes unnoticed. Let's make some. This year we were a bit light on nominations, so I think we make a point that we look out for people that just go under the radar, do their stuff for the community, but there's a lot of people that should be getting awards as well, I think. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Graham.
Yep, thank you. I'd like to recognise a senior citizen of Murderford who died in the last couple of weeks. Really nice gentleman, Eddie Hoffman. Was married to Faye for 31 years, but she unfortunately has already passed. Eddie was well known and involved heavily with the Murderford SES, also probably in his younger years, but in more recent times, the Men's Shed, Alpine Leisure Group. He's a grandpa to 5, he's a great grandpa and a great great grandpa, so he'll be really missed amongst friends and family. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Ronco.
Just the same that Noah and Peter, so I would like to congratulate all the recipients for the Alpine Shire Australia Day Awards. And also the public, it was good to see a bit more public this year, so it was good to see more residents too. So yeah, perhaps next year we could have a bit more people again, so it would be good. Thank you.
Councillor Byrne.
I was lucky enough to attend Mudgegonga's Community Hall on the weekend. They put on a fantastic show for Australia Day, and I'd like to congratulate the committee for such a wonderful show.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson. I'd like to congratulate our staff for getting the Dinner Plain fire break cleared as soon as possible. Once the Dinner Plain, or some of the fires started breaking out in the mountains, and it sounded like it was a pretty, it was quite a big job, and great that we could get machinery up there and make it happen quickly. And I also wanted to say a thank you to all the CFA and SES volunteers from the Alpine Shire who are going outside the Shire to support the people who are fighting hard and campaign firing now, but certainly in those hot spots we had a lot of people out there from here helping out, including some of our staff at relief centres, etc. So a big thank you for the support across this area from everyone here. It's all from me. And we move on then to item 6, which is declarations by councillors of conflict of interest. And I don't think anybody has one tonight. No one's raised one yet, but we all know that if we think later on in the agenda that we might have one, then you can raise it at any point in time. Item 7 is public questions. I'm going to start with the following up from last month and start with some questions taken on notice from the 16th of December. One of the questions was from Mr. Dyer, who's here in the audience tonight, to ask about recording question time in our council minutes. And we have discussed this a number of times over iterations of council that I've been involved in, and the decision has been to not record those the questions by hand, because or put them into written minutes, because it can be quite a time-consuming and expensive operation, because we'd need to bring a second person in here to make that happen. And we offer Mr. Dyer, who's the only person who asks for those minutes, the possibility of going to a library to look at the YouTube to have a look at what occurred when you want to have a look at their record. So that is no, that's not written. But it, right, okay, that's fine. Thank you very much for your comments. But that's what we can offer, that you can go to the library and have a look at it yourself and then see what was said and what the answers were. So that's the answer to that one. And now I am going to go on to some other questions. I'm going to direct these next questions to our Director of Assets, Ms. Buckley. The first one was about further information to be provided about 1 Mummery Road, Myrtleford. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is still a work in progress, so we have at this point been unable to find out how this parcel of land was acquired. We're doing further research within the team to try and find historical records on the exact details to ensure the accuracy before we go back to Mr McDonald. And then the second part, we certainly do have our environmental audit. The team is still reviewing it. Once the full review of the audit is complete and we're happy to share the detail, that will be forwarded to Mr McDonald, and said information should be prior to the next council meeting.
Thank you. The next question for you is, we had a question on notice about improving safety at the Myrtleford Splash Park between the river and the road.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it was reflected. There were two safety matters reflected, one which was requests for a fence along the roadside to stop children running onto the road, and the second request was a fence near the creek. So I can inform all that were at the meeting that we are proceeding with bolstering the existing fence on the outside parallel to the roadway. This is likely to be done, I've heard this afternoon, by adding additional wires instead of an entire new fence with smaller gaps. It's unlikely that we will fence the section alongside the creek. It's worth noting previously our other areas such as the Bright Splash Park and other playgrounds near waterways aren't fenced, and it's our preference to use these natural features and place materials such as plantings to contain people to an area and encourage active supervision by parents.
Thank you, Ms Buckley. The final question for you from the questions on notice is around getting a bit more detail about which streets in Myrtleford and Mount Beauty are up for curb and channel repairs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are a variety of streets. There's around about 18 streets in total, so I won't read all of them out. If anyone wants that finer detail, I'm happy to email that to them. A selection are Standish, Elgin, Mummery, O'Donnell, Hillside, Court, Lawrence, and the list goes on.
Thank you very much. And there is a question for our Acting Director, Corporate and Community, Ms Buckley, which is about, there was some discussion about Myrtleford Visitor Information Centre and staffing from volunteers and needing support from full-time staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've taken on board this feedback from our Myrtleford VIC volunteers, and we're currently assessing the ongoing operation of the Myrtleford VIC since it moved into its new location at Myrtleford Memorial Hall late last year. Our VIC coordinator is doing a great job supporting the volunteers as they adjust into their new site and working through any teething issues as we change location. Our VIC volunteers are such a vital part of providing really high quality visitor servicing, and they do a really wonderful job. Should we require further staffing support, we'll progress this through the usual resourcing process, and we're always happy to hear from any of our volunteers and staff on how we can support them.
Thank you, Ms Buckley. There were no further questions on notice to respond to, but so I'll now open the floor to ask if there's any questions from the floor. Ms Pike, thank you.
Mary Pike from the Kiwa Valley. I just want to query the last quick reply to the December question. Was it about streets in Mount Beauty? We didn't recognise one of the names of any of those streets that were read out, so we were just a little surprised.
Thank you, Mary. Just bear with me one moment and I'll pull up the list. It is all in Myrtleford this year. So as mentioned at the previous meeting, we have rotation to each township across the Shire. So they're all in Myrtleford, and there's one very, very tiny section in Bright at Blue Hills Rise.
Thank you. My second question is a little redundant because you've mostly covered it in your earlier discussion yourselves. I was surprised yesterday when Noah was reading out the awards in Mount Beauty that the list seemed very limited. And then when your media came out, a lot of the traditional awards weren't granted. And obviously I've had my question answered already, because you had obviously a lack of applications. So I just bolster up what all of you have said and wish that the community actually made sure they got some names in for those awards, because whether you're for or against Australia Day, it's our way of showing the value of our community. Whatever day it is, it could be another date, but make the most of it while you can.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mary. I think you're hearing some hears from up here. Yep. Very much encourage people to put awards in, both for the community of the people and youth. Yeah. Yes. And the youth awards do really well. So, yeah, that's of interest. Any further questions from the floor? Mr. Dyer, you know the routine. So, according to Ned.
Come on, Ray, you know what to do.
This should be on film.
My name is Ray Dyer and I reside at Buffalo River. Now, as for the question last month, I don't think I did it last month, but it was the November meeting when I asked for a copy of the minutes of the meetings, because each councillor votes on those minutes to be true and correct. And they're not true and correct when they don't have the minutes of the question time put in them. And Will says straight out that they're being more accountable. I can't see how they can be more accountable when they leave question time out, when they're supposed to be in there. That's my theory on that. My second theory is, last month and maybe the month before, I spoke about meeting with the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor about the actions of the CEO and the previous Mayor. Well, the new Mayor is the previous Mayor. So I'd like to talk to somebody about the CEO being sacked and the new Mayor stood down for 6 months, because there's been no accountability. Last year there was no accountability. Years before that, I've been dealing with the Shire for 20 years. Next month will be 20 years I've been dealing with the Shire. And over that time, I've not seen accountability yet. With every Mayor and every CEO, they should hold their heads shame. And as far as I'm concerned, the sooner we meet, and if I can't meet with somebody with a bit of authority, I'll meet with the new councillors to discuss why the CEO should be sacked and the Mayor should be stood down for 6 months. I've asked that with the CEO being sacked nearly 3 times now. This is the 3rd time I've done it. And you know what the worst part about that is? He hasn't had the common courtesy to even talk to me, which is wrong.
Thank you, Ray. Are there any further questions from the floor?
I expect to meet with somebody about this, with authority.
Thank you, Ray. We'll take it on notice and work out a process. Do you want to say anything?
No, I reckon he could be outside this organisation. If he's complaining about the Mayor and the CEO, he should go to an ombudsman or an inspectorate. But let's take it on notice. We'll respond in writing. We'll write to him and say where we can take his complaints to. That's good, yeah.
Mr. Dyer, we just had a quick discussion up here. We'll write to you and let you know where you can take your complaints, because it's not this organisation. If you want the Mayor and the CEO to be stood down, it's external. Yeah. So we'll let you know who you need to go to. Thanks. We are now up to item 8, presentation of reports and access, and we have the next person we're going to have in the hot seat is Ms Buckley, Director of Assets, Ms Buckley. We usually have the CEO in at this point in time, but he's got the day off.
Lucky him.
I'm going to go. I've got a couple of 2 dogs at home.
Thank you, Mr Dyer. See you next month.
I'll see you next month.
Yep. Sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Dinner Plain Activation Phase 1 project. This report relates to unspent funding from Dinner Plain Activation Phase 1 grant toilet block project and the financial implications should Council choose to utilise the remaining grant funds. In September 2020, Council secured $500,000 of funding from the State Government Bushfire Tourism and Business Fund 2020 to deliver the Dinner Plain Activation Phase 1 project. Council's co-contribution to this project was $900,000, which was accounted for from the Dinner Plain Reserve, bringing the total budget to 1.4. Of the project, the grant agreement included upgrading Scrubbers Hut, new footpaths, new mountain bike tracks, car parking upgrades and the construction of a new toilet block at the bottom of the toboggan slope. The upgrade of Scrubbers Hut, new footpaths and new mountain bike tracks and car parking upgrades have now been completed, and 1.2 million of the funding has been expended. It's worth noting that the Dinner Plain Reserve has ceased to receive income from the 30th of June 2025, with general income going forward forming a part of Council's general revenue and waste reserve, and expenses continuing to be managed through Council's waste reserve. Funds in the reserve are being expended to support approved projects and services within Dinner Plain until such time as the reserve is exhausted. However, additional transfer of funds are restricted by the internal process of the reserve and must be authorised by Council in the following manner. 1, identified in the budgeting process as funds committed to be transferred from the reserve account, or by Council resolution to approve a transfer of funds which has not been identified in the budgeting process. The toilet block originally planned for the bottom of the toboggan slope was not constructed, as an assessment determined that it presented a collision risk for those using the toboggan slope. Although Council officers investigated alternative locations, none were deemed suitable due to terrain constraints, accessibility issues and safety concerns. This has resulted in an underspend of $200,000 against the original scope that was committed in the grant agreement. Regional Development Victoria has worked with Council officers to develop a change of scope that will include a perimeter fence for the toboggan run and minor renewal works to the cafe at Scrubbers Hut. It's worth specifically noting the financial and resource implications. As I mentioned just earlier, $200,000 of the original scope has not yet been spent. If Council chooses to repurpose the funding, this would require an unbudgeted spend of $200,000 for the 25-26 financial year, made up of $128,957 of Council cash contribution and $71,043 of grant funding. The reason for this is that Council officers only determined that the final scope could not be achieved after the 25-26 budget was adopted, and this resulted in an underspend not being carried forward. Council's published annual financial statement for 24-25 confirms the reserve balance as at the 30 June 2025 to be $968,000. At June 2025 Ordinary Council meeting, Council approved projects and services to be accounted from the Dinner Plain Reserve in 25-26 to a total of $431,182. The approval to fund this additional expenditure at Dinner Plain would result in an approved total expenditure for this current financial year of $631,182. A final reconciliation and report coming to Council for the reserve position will be brought to Council in early 26-27 financial year. It's also worth noting the specific financial implications for consideration, and these are as follows. The Dinner Plain Reserve will be reduced by $200,000 as at June 2026. The 25-26 net cash flow will be reduced by $200,000. The adjusted underlying deficit for 25-26 will not be impacted. However, it's worth noting that ongoing years will be impacted by an additional $2,400 of depreciation for the new open space components of the project. The balance sheet will show an increase in fixed assets of $200,000. Also highlighted in the report are risks, which you can read listed in the table. Options for new scope and the associated risks and opportunities were determined after discussions with the operations contractors at Dinner Plain, Council's internal teams, the Dinner Plain Community Association and Regional Development Victoria. Council's decision is now required to approve unbudgeted expenditure of $200,000 consisting of the makeup that I mentioned earlier, and would result in achieving further infrastructure at Dinner Plain. Therefore, this evening the recommendation is that Council approves unbudgeted expenditure of $200,000 to complete Dinner Plain Activation Phase 1 project and approves permitted expenditure from the Dinner Plain Reserve in the 25-26 financial year.
Thank you, Ms Buckley. Councillors. Moved, Councillor Byrne. Seconded, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Byrne.
Director Buckley, I note that Scrubbers Hut upgrade has been completed, it says in the report. To that end, have we completed a condition data assessment on both the fence and Scrubbers Hut?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Two parts to that question. We have condition data on Scrubbers Hut, the toilets and the kiosk. This was done as part of our standard building condition assessments around about 2.5 years ago. Those condition assessments state that Council would be required to do the renewal work within the next 3 years regardless. In relation to the fence, we have two fences for the previous season, one which is a soft net, a safety net that catches tobogganners, and the second is a security fence that this season was temporary with webbing that we've had feedback to say that it didn't do a particularly good job, but the biggest concern was that it looked aesthetically very poor. So it's likely we would need to replace this fence anyway for this upcoming season. Next question, which part of the question, apologies, was that one?
I noticed we've done the upgrade.
So, yes, so there's a couple of parts to Scrubbers Hut and the kiosk, you could say. So we upgraded some toilets but not others. So the toilets and the kiosk, the old toilets and the kiosk are the ones that would need to be renewed within the next 3 years. No problem.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend? Nothing? Any other questions from other councillors? I have a question, Ms Buckley. Is there likelihood that we would achieve funding to do those works if we chose not to do them with what we've got in front of us tonight? I know it's a crystal ball question, but is there state government funding or something along those lines that we could get hold of to complete the works up there?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Currently, maybe didn't state this explicitly in the report, but we would have to hand the funding back if we weren't to go ahead with the project, the portion that's funded. There's always grants that become available. It's just whether they specifically fit that exact project at the time. So it can be challenging to re-secure funding, but I can't say whether it will or won't, but you've then got to go through the process of filling out the grant application, resubmitting, going through all of that work again.
Thank you. I've got one more question too. It's a bit more operational. I understand that the fencing we're talking about will be snow fencing, which will effectively catch snow during a storm and support snow on the toboggan area. Have I got that right?
Sort of. You're correct. The fencing, the safety fencing that we've currently got that catches people will remain. So it's in good condition. It's reasonably new and it was part of the project. The external fencing that we put in each time, which is just temporary posts and parawebbing, was, I've found out from the team, particularly difficult for the contractor to manage. Anytime you touched it, the parawebbing would fall down and they'd be starting again. The fence that would replace that would be a permanent fence. And that there would be, you know, necessary maintenance for them in and around the fence.
Sure. Thank you. Any further questions or comments from councillors? We'll take this one to the vote. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. We move on to item 8.1.2, Myrtleford landfill cap construction variation. Thank you, Ms Buckley, Director of Assets.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Myrtleford landfill cap construction variations. This report relates to a budgeted contract variation for Myrtleford landfill rehabilitation cap construction Cell 1 and Cell 2. The Myrtleford landfill comprises Cell 1 and 2, previously used to accept domestic waste. Completing landfill cap construction works on both cells ensures compliance with the Environmental Protection Authority Victoria legislated requirements. The design of the Myrtleford landfill cap commenced in October 2020 to meet the best practice environmental management guidelines. The EPA approved the cap design in August 2023. Subsequently, Council adopted a budget in 24-25 financial year. After strong encouragement from the EPA and in order to receive efficiencies in the associated construction, Council awarded the landfill cap construction of both cells under one contract for that financial year, which resulted in a total contract value of $2,224,670 GST exclusive. There have been other variations prior to this one. Early construction phase, there were latent conditions encountered. The original design approved by the EPA assumed a level of compaction within the existing landfill. However, on-site conditions showed something very different, which was greater voids between the landfill material that couldn't have been predicted, and we were required to bring in additional fill material and import it to site. Additional variations were also associated with traffic management, infrastructure and road widening at the time. This meant then that Council approved these variations in May 2025 at the Ordinary Council meeting for a further $306,000, bringing the new total value of the contract to around about 2.5. The exact figure is listed in the report. The new variations this evening are a result of post the award of the contract. It was determined that the original design developed by the designers specified that the top layer of the topsoil was topsoil, precluding its use as a stockpile area, which is what we currently use the area for. At Council's request, the design was revised to incorporate a hard stand so we could use the area for stockpiling. The current contractor, Extons, or the contractor, offered to substitute the topsoil with Class 4 material, and they said that this would not impact the overall cost. However, towards the end of the construction, the EPA indicated that this represented a significant alteration to the initial design, and they asked that a redesign was undertaken. To secure approval of the hard sand, EPA stipulated that we needed a layer of Class 2 material instead of Class 4. Due to the construction of the new hard stand area and further changes to site drainage, as well as some additional waste being found and extending the boundary, the total cost of the new variations for this lot are $216,681. The total variation of this amount was approved by Council's CEO in December of 2025 to ensure the construction could be completed to meet contractual deadlines and not incur delay costs from the contractor. Council's procurement policy was adopted in June 2025, and this allows, under a specific clause, and I quote, approve variation by exception where approval of the variation is required to maintain business continuity and will not result in total expenditure under the contract exceeding the available budget. This then needs to be reported to Council, hence this report this evening. Funding this variation is likely to require an increase in the general waste charge in 26-27 and 27-28 due to overall costs of capping works exceeding what was originally projected in the waste reserve. And the risks are listed in the report this evening. The additional expenditure was authorised by the CEO under exemptions within Council's existing procurement policy to ensure the construction could be completed to meet contractual deadlines and not incur delay costs. Therefore, this evening, it is recommended that Council notes the Chief Executive Officer approved budget variations under the contract for Myrtleford Landfill Cap Construction Cells 1 and 2 to the value of $216,681, and that this approval is in line with the current procurement policy.
Thank you, Ms Buckley. Councillors. Moved Councillor Graham, seconded Councillor Byrne. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Ms Buckley. I've got a three-part question for you.
Sure.
Firstly, is it finished completely now? Secondly, some time back we identified a possibility of a cell 3. Does that still present a problem? And thirdly, what's the EPA's assessment of the work that's now been completed?
Thank you, Councillor Graham. It is finished. We're very excited. It looks spectacular if you like landfills, which I do, capped ones, that is. So it is finished. We're just, as you would be aware, we have a contract holdover period after the works are finished to ensure defects are appropriately handled. Cell 3, which was the waste that we discovered when we did an audit of the site not too long ago, has not been capped, and it is currently about to go into design phase because the EPA would like us to cap that as well. Unbeknownst to us that it existed, not an uncommon thing for old historical landfills. And I'm pleased to announce that the EPA paid us a visit just before Christmas, if my memory is correct, and they were very pleased with the outcome of the capping works. In addition to that, they noted that they thought our transfer stations were gold star and that all transfer stations in Victoria should aim to be like them, so we were tickled pink.
Yep, that's pretty exciting. Well done.
Yep.
Another congratulations. Councillor Byrne.
Just one question, Director Buckley. You say that Port Plunket Landfill Cap incorporated a hard stand. How did we not carry over that lesson to the new hard stand to be constructed at Myrtleford for the Class 4 versus Class 2 fuel?
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. A good question. To begin with, the topsoil that was originally specified was not actually in the bill of quantities, unfortunately. So it was a miss and the contractor picked it up. It was a miss in the documentation by the designer, unfortunately, so we're dealing with that. Every landfill site is different and can have different material specified for the capping works. So when the contractor offered to not do a variation and import Class 4, we thought that would be acceptable. We, of course, always run past the EPA, if there is a change. We wouldn't offer up a Class 2 material if we thought Class 4 was viable, which we did. We use Class 4 in a lot of our construction works for roads, etc. And to which their answer was, no, we want it to be Class 2, which incurred a cost because of the the class of the material.
Any further questions? No.
Madam Mayor, can I seek a clarification on a comment that Director Buckley made? The location that the EPA visited, is it correct that they visited Porpunca and Myrtleford but not Mount Beauty?
I'll have to check that. My understanding was they made it to Mount Beauty as well on the day, but let me bring that back to the next council meeting, because I'm getting some looks from the gallery. So I'll bring that back to the next council meeting.
I had another question, just interest, and particularly for previous councillors who might be watching. We really struggled to get the capping material for the Porpunca landfill capping, the class 2. So do we have trouble sourcing for Myrtleford?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We didn't. We did historically have trouble at both Myrtleford and Porpunca before using the geosynthetic liner. So we were previously looking for just clay. And now most councils or those responsible for landfills tend to use GCL because it's easier to source and more affordable.
Thank you. Anything further? Take that as a vote. Councillors, all those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. And now we're moving on to 8.2, which says in my agenda, Director Corporate and Community Natalie Cook. So can we please change that to the appropriate wording in the minutes so we're accountable? Thank you. And I will invite our acting Ms Buckley to start 8.2.1, Instruments of Delegation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Instruments of delegation are an important means for Council to ensure its officers hold the appropriate legislative powers for the various acts and regulations that Council administers. This report provides a supplementary update to the S6 Instrument of Delegation that was approved at the October 2025 Ordinary Council meeting. This update is required due to changes in the Planning and Environment Act as a result of the Consumer and Planning Legislation Amendment Act 2025, which commenced in late 2025. Council operates under more than 110 different pieces of legislation, each of which provides specific powers, duties or functions either to Council as the governing body or directly to the Chief Executive Officer. To enable Council as an organisation to run smoothly and avoid the need for every legislative decision to be presented to a Council meeting, many of these powers, duties and functions are passed on by instruments of delegation from Council to the CEO and members of Council staff. The delegation of Council's powers, duties and functions is a routine process presented to a Council meeting, which was most recently presented to October 25 Ordinary Council meeting. The Consumer and Planning Legislation Amendment made several changes to the Planning and Environment Act 1987 in late November 25. These include new Council powers, including a revised mechanism in relation to preparing amendments to the planning scheme and other changes relating to the abandoning of amendments. Repealed Council powers. Several sections of the Act were repealed and have largely been replaced by new provisions relating to the amendment of planning schemes. And a few other key amendments, requirements for Council to keep records relating to levy exemption certificates, duty not to refer frivolous, vexatious or irrelevant submissions to the planning panel, and ability for the Minister to issue guidelines on material detriment, which Council will be required to consider. Until such time as Council updates the original S6 Instrument of Delegation adopted in October, the S6A Instrument of Delegation will supersede those actions relevant to the new repealed and amended sections of the Planning and Environment Act. It is anticipated that a new version of the S6 Instrument of Delegation will be presented to Council in either February or March this year and will encompass all current powers in the Planning and Environment Act 1987 in the one instrument. The risks are outlined in the agenda report. A review of the S6A instrument of delegation to members of council staff will ensure that council officers can undertake the updated and amended legislative powers, duties and functions as set out in the Planning and Environment Act 1987 related to their role. So the recommendation tonight is that council exercises the powers confirmed by the legislation referred to in attachment S6A instrument of delegation from council to members of council staff as outlined in the agenda report.
Thank you, Ms Buckley. Councillors? Mover and seconder. Moved Councillor Anderson, seconded Councillor Tanzan. Councillor Anderson? Nothing to add? Councillor Tanzan? Anything from anybody? No? This is to maintain our business continuity. So we'll take it to the vote. All those in favour? It's unanimous, thank you. And we move on to 8.2.2, the complaints policy. Ms Buckley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In accordance with the requirements of Section 107 of the Local Government Act, Council must have a complaints policy to enable the appropriate management of complaints. Our complaints policy is currently due for review. The purpose of this report is to present to Council the reviewed complaints policy for adoption. We are required under the Local Government Act to develop and maintain a policy that includes a process for dealing with complaints made to Council, a process for reviewing any action, decision or service in respect of which the complaint is made, a discretion for the Council to refuse to deal with a complaint which is otherwise subject to statutory review, the prescribed processes for dealing with complaints about Council, prescribed processes for internal review of complaints made to Council, prescribed processes for exercising discretion and any other matter prescribed by the regulations. We initially adopted our complaints policy in November 2021, which came into effect in January 2022. This document is due for review, hence why we're here tonight. This review now considers Council's dealing with difficult customers policy, which was not a policy that we had at the time of the initial complaints policy adoption, and it utilises the guidance in the Victorian Ombudsman's Councils and Complaints Good Practice Guide. The complaints policy defines a complaint as being a communication, whether oral or in writing, to the Council by a person of their dissatisfaction with the quality of an action taken, decision made or service provided by a member of Council staff or a contractor engaged by Council, a delay by a member of Council staff or contractor engaged by Council in taking an action, making a decision or providing a service, and a policy or decision made by Council or a member of Council staff or a contractor. The complaints policy scope does not include those decisions or processes that have a separate statutory or other legislative appeal processes such as planning. This includes issues like planning applications and decisions, parking and local law infringements, building, health and food services. Complaints of these types must be dealt with in accordance with their statutory processes and will be managed separately from this policy. This review makes some small changes to the document, which was essentially fit for purpose. It includes refinements on how complaints differ to service requests, aligns a little more closely to the Victorian Ombudsman's guidance in that area, and further clarifies Council officers responsible for responding to and investigating complaints. The review further clarifies how Tier 1, 2 and 3 complaints will be managed, and it includes reporting information updated to reflect the current Council plan. It also ensures that the complaints policy is in alignment with the dealing with difficult customers policy adopted by Council in 2024. Risks are outlined in the agenda report. The maintenance of this policy is a requirement of the Local Government Act. It recognises Council's commitment to providing high quality service to all customers and community members and seeking out opportunities to improve service delivery. It also identifies how we can report to Council and the community and adjust our internal processes to meet the needs of our community moving forward. The recommendation tonight is that Council adopt the complaints policy in accordance with Section 107 of the Local Government Act, sign and seal the complaints policy at the appropriate stage of this meeting.
Thank you, Ms Buckley. Councillors? Councillor Graham? Councillor Byrne? Councillor Graham?
No, nothing to add.
Councillor Byrne?
Acting Director Buckley, please. Will this complaints policy assist with the development of a proposed customer service chat
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. It will. Great question. So in the council plan that we adopted last year, we committed to developing and adopting a public-facing customer charter in year 1 of the current council plan, which ends at the end of this financial year. Customer engagement is actually starting shortly on the development of this charter, which is essentially a forward-facing document that enables us to make a commitment to the community and to our customer around things like service delivery, timeframes, and generally how we maximise our data in the way we manage our customers and how we meet their needs in an adaptable way. It'll align with the Dealing with Difficult Customers policy and this complaints policy to create a suite of tools aimed at refining and improving our customer experience.
Thank you.
Secondly, I note somebody wrote to us a lovely compliment of one of our staff members completed recently and pointed out the fact that we have a complaints division on our website. We don't have a compliments page on our website. Would we look at introducing one?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. It is quite possible that we already have. The Communications and Engagement team was on that request this afternoon. So we currently on our website have a page which is a contact us page that has all of our details, and we will add a tab to that that essentially says if you have a compliment, we'd love to hear them. We also love to hear any compliments through our info@email address and via phone, or you can walk into any of our libraries and let us know what we've done well. And they often get, we anonymise them and they get published in our staff newsletter, so staff do get to see those compliments. They don't just stop where they're submitted.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from councillors? Councillor Anderson.
This policy will be an internal and public-facing policy. Where will people be able to see this, find this policy?
So this policy will be, thank you, Councillor, this policy will be available on our website. As soon as it's signed and sealed, we'll have it up by the end of this week, and it will be available. We'll also include some community communication around it, because we recognise that often complaints management can be seen as quite dry, but it is a really important way of how we gauge how our customers and community are experiencing us, and they're a really valuable data point to give us an idea of where we need to improve. So we'll do broad-ranging communication to let people know about this policy.
So a complaint's not necessarily a bad thing for the organisation, it's an opportunity to improve or get a good understanding of what's happening in the community.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
Thanks.
We are looking at the data that we gather from complaints and reframing that as an opportunity for improvement rather than we've done something wrong. It's our opportunity to be better for our customers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions, comments before we take this one to the vote? No? We'll take it to the vote then. All those in favour? And that is a unanimous vote tonight again. Well done. And thank you to everyone for the work that went in and great questions. That is the end of our director reports. We move on to informal meetings of councillors. And for people who haven't been to the council meeting before, this is when we've, the briefing sessions where we've got together and become more informed about the decisions that we need to make while we're up here on the bench. And we record 3, and there's in the attachments there's the more detail. And I would ask our councillors now to move and second the recommendation as they choose. Councillor Anderson. Moved Councillor Anderson, seconded Councillor Byrne. Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah.
Councillor Byrne. Any comments, questions, corrections? No? Super. We'll take that one to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Presentation of reports by delegates. I'm going to start on my right with Councillor Anderson, in case there are any over the Christmas New Year break. Councillor Byrne, no?
No.
No?
Nope.
Nope. Oh, I thought I just wondered then for a minute. Okay, no reports from delegates, so that's good. Well, or not. Next item is general business, and I'm going to start with my right again. Councillor Anderson. No. Councillor Byrne?
Not for me.
No. Councillor Byrne? Well, I'm going to, you know what I'm like. got to say something. I actually forgot to say congratulations that I'd had a number of compliments across the holiday season from visitors. One was a phone call which I followed up, and one was because I was involved in the same function that person was, and a couple have just been talked in the street saying how terrific the Alpine Shire looked, what great facilities we have and how well we look after them. So compliments to the outdoor team, and I was thinking about that when Councillor Byrne was asking about the compliments page. It'd be really good to be able to refer people to that, so then we can count the compliments too and use it as a learning experience. So looking forward to that. And I would like to invite Mr. Jeremy for general business.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a couple of short items. The first is I'd like to note that our engagement with the community to inform or start to inform the preparation of the draft budget closed very recently. We received close to 100 submissions, which is significantly more than we've achieved in any other year that we can recall on our budget, usually pretty dry topic. So I'd like to thank the community members who took the time to provide input and also congratulate the team on their shift in approach, which has resulted in us opening up an opportunity for really good feedback. We're going to work through that, or we are working through that feedback at the moment. Then we engage with council over the next couple of months, and then round about March or April, we will put out the draft budget for next year for the community to have a look at what draft is proposed. But thank you, community. Well done, team, on that one. We've got 2 items open for community engagement at the moment, both of them very important. The first one closes on the 6th of February, and that's the community electric vehicle charging opportunity. So if anyone in the community has interest in where potentially council might make available land for a commercial opportunity to establish charging facilities, this is your opportunity to have your say and to influence potentially the outcome of that engagement. The second one opened very recently, and this is also very significant. This is the Community Climate Action Plan engagement. This is a process which is going to run over quite a few months, so you've got a lot of opportunity to get engaged. But if you go onto the Alpine Engage website, you can have some input at this stage. You can read all the documents that are in there. You can register interest in becoming involved in some workshops later this year. And also worth noting is that we've got some pop-ups which will commence from late February and run through into March at our markets. So a really important piece of work. If you've got any interest in how council can support the community to deliver better outcomes in relation to climate action, then this is your opportunity to get involved. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Yeah, have mine.
Musical mics. Thank you very much, Mr. Jeremy. And very important matters, absolutely. Super. Item 12 is motions for which notice has previously been given, and there are none. 13 is reception and reading of petitions. Again, there are none. 14 is documents for signing and sealing. And we have 2 instruments of delegation and the complaints policy, both of which we had on the agenda tonight. So I ask for councillors to move and second those documents for signing and sealing. Councillor Byrne, Councillor Smith, thank you. Anything to say? Questions, comments? No? All those in favour? Beautiful, that is unanimous. And we have item 15, confidential reports. There are none. And we move on to 16, closure of meeting at 5:58. And I think Councillor Graham lost the vote, lost the bet.